Where does Harden rank as an offensive peak? Does he have an argument over Kobe, Steph, Jokic? I think he's one of the few players who can be top 5 in 2 positions: point guard and shooting guard.
How long was James Harden's peak?
I would say 3 years. I would say from like 16, 17 to maybe like 19, 20.
Top 5 point guard is absolutely ridiculous. Top 5 point guard is just crazy, but I got a migraine right now.
Okay, quick question. So since we getting off, who would you rather have lead your offense? Not who would you rather have lead your offense? Peak Harden or peak CP3?
CP3.
Chris Paul.
Ben.
Harden.
Mars, I think I know your answer.
You just said offense. We're not talking defense.
Yeah, just
right?
lead your team offensively.
Then this is crazy. It's obviously Harden. My God.
Okay, that's wild.
Yeah.
I would take Harden. I don't know how obvious it is. I would take Harden probably. Yeah. Yeah.
Pen, you wrapped up in the buckets.
Yeah, I think, but CP3 was nice though.
Basketball, chill.
Yeah,
what else?
And that's the point right there, Pink, because like you said, it's basketball. So, John D, I ask you, what type of questions are you asking? It's basketball.
I think it's a good conversation. I think it's a good conversation.
Who am I want to leave my office? We talking basketball. I just can't do that. I'm taking CP3.
Yeah, I'm taking. Am I?
Well, let me be clear.
Yes.
I like CP3 a hell of a lot more. I prefer CP3. If I'm building a winning organization and I want someone to quarterback my offense and quarterback my locker room, be in charge of youth development, keep everyone in line, set the marching orders for, how we're approaching the season. Yeah, I mean, I prefer all of CP3's intangibles, his defense, all that stuff. But I cannot deny that there is a massive offensive gap here in terms of just volume of production. And it does matter.
What are we talking about? We're talking about production, Payne. Like when you say a massive gap in volume of production, from buckets, from distributing,
pressure,
from playmaking,
pressure.
Just putting pressure on the offense.
Yeah, pressure on the defense. I mean, James Harden is their like relentless heart attack for the defense. He is consistently, pulling up from crazy distances. Yeah, I mean, and yeah, I don't think it's crazy to consider him a top 5 point guard. I mean, when we did our passer rankings, I mean, he was damn near number 1 on that. He's played the position for half his career. He's been a point guard. How is it crazy to consider him a top 5 point guard? Who are you putting over him? John Stockton? Get out of here.
Mm-hmm.
I think CP3 doesn't get a lot of praise though. That's why I asked CP3. One, I think he's one of the most underrated mid-range scorers the league has ever seen. He's one of the greatest pick and roll ball handlers, and he's one of the trickiest guys to guard because you have to worry about him seeing the floor where 95% of point guards in history just can't see it.
Okay, who's a better passer? Straight up, who's a better passer? Be for real now.
I think it's CP3. I think it's CP3. I think CP3 is the better passer.
All right.
Ben, I don't think this is a conversation.
I think that one's pretty obvious. Yeah,
I don't think that's a conversation, Ben.
You don't think it's a conversation?
I don't.
No, I don't.
I think that's less of a conversation than the offensive. Like, who would you rather have?
I don't think that's a conversation. And on top of that, I think that Chris Paul, I'm never going to be out of the flow of the offense. James Harden could possibly get me out of the flow of the offense. That's why I feel like when we're talking about offensively, I'm going with Chris Paul because I'm always going to be involved on some level. Harden is.
I think it's a conversation with their passing. I'll agree. CP3 is a better passer, but like, we're talking about a 6'5" jumbo creator. His angles are different, right? Like the passing windows that he has are different. It's harder to stop that. I mean, at 6'5", with his scoring gravity, with his relentless downhill attack, him getting to the line. I'm sorry, like I'm trying to think of this from a defensive perspective. If I'm a defensive coordinator, who do I want to see on the other side? I would much rather see Chris Paul on the other side. Well, James Harden is striking a way more fear. Again, defensively, completely
we're staying on the offensive side of the ball, Penn. We just stand on the offensive side of the ball. We ain't talking about defensively. You stand on the offensive side of the ball. And when you talk about Ox and I've had this conversation, when you talk about a visionary, a guy that's seeing the game 2-3 plays ahead, a guy that can manipulative, and a guy who can decipher the game within the game, and he's telling other guys, "I see you here. I see you there, you do this while the game is going on. James Harden is more of a scorer who can pass way more than Chris Paul is a passer who can score.
But
no
James
doubt
Harden
about that.
did that too, though.
I hate to step in and interrupt this intense yap session that you're currently watching, but I just have to inform you on all the amazing, spectacular, fabulous, endless ways to play and win over at PrizePicks. Basketball fans, I know the season is just tipping off. Yes, I know this. But you know what that means? It means that you have an opportunity to pick your favorite players and their matchups that are the most thrilling, and you can win money from these. With PrizePicks, you can play daily NBA contests and test your hoop knowledge by choosing the player projections and every single stat line imaginable to make your prize picks and take home some nice hard-earned cash. Are you a rookie in the game? Don't even sweat it. I got the playbook for you right here. All you have to do is download PrizePicks, use promo code PANEL, and you will get $50 instantly when you play 5 here with PrizePicks. So what are you waiting for? Download PrizePicks, use promo code PANEL, and join me as we break down all of our amazing daily picks right here on the panel. PrizePicks. Run your game, control your game, win your game. It's easy, baby. It's easy.
I don't think that he did it to the level of
don't
Chris
let
Paul,
the
though.
scoring distract you.
James Harden had
from
control
the
of like
playmaking.
every offensive aspect, like that, telling people where to be, like seeing what coverages defenses are in and attacking accordingly. Like James Harden did all of that, and then he was also just like liable to just destroy you. Like, yeah, I got James Harden offensive. I got James Harden offensively, but like, I think he does more of the point guard things than you're giving him credit for, I guess is what I'm saying.
It's not that I'm not giving him credit for it. I just think that Chris Paul is better. But to your point, what you just said, in terms of him deciphering things, that was largely due to him getting buckets. That was largely due to his scoring. I felt like him dominating the basketball, not just him dominating the basketball. I mean, Miles, I think that I want to say the 15-16 season, either the 15-16 season or the 16-17 season, I think he led the league in dribbles. I think he had over 600.
He probably led it in dribbles every year, if I'm being honest.
He still leads the league in dribbles.
Right. So with that being said, I know that I feel playing with Chris Paul, with him being able to decipher what a defense is doing. I know I'm going to get the ball and I'm going to get it in space more often than I am with James Harden, because I think James Harden is a score-first guard who can pass. I think Chris Paul is more of a distributor who can score.
He is, yes. James Harden's more score first and Chris Paul's more pass first. But then do you just rather have the pass first player lead your offense all the time?
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with like who's around them. Because if I'm saying like if CP3 is leading my offense and he has to be the primary scorer, I probably would lean Harden. But if I have another guy that can give me like 22 to 25 a night and CP3 is running that show and getting that guy easier looks, then I may lean CP3, because CP3, what he does as a scorer is amazing. But when we look at him and trying to lean on him to give you 25 to 27 every night, I just don't think that's how his game was. And if you want to lean on Harden to give you that every night, I think you would have a little bit more success.
I just think you get to a certain level of player, and I don't know if James Harden is that level of player. Maybe that's a conversation offensively, where like I understand being pass first and getting guys involved, but like if you pass at that level, like it's fine to probably be score first and be more valuable as an offensive engine. Like I wouldn't. James Harden is not this guy, but I'm saying it for like a comparison of styles, I guess. I wouldn't take Chris Paul over LeBron to lead my offense because Chris Paul's more pass first and LeBron isn't. Does that make sense?
Exactly.
Like that wouldn't be the reason. The pass firstedness wouldn't be the reason.
That's a good point. That's a good point for LeBron.
And I'm not saying James Harden is LeBron before people start getting mad at me. But
right. That's all I'm saying, Mars. Like I know you weren't saying that, and I'm just saying like that's a very good point when we're talking about LeBron.
Yeah, I get it.
But to counter that, Mars, I can appreciate the logic of not taking Chris Paul over James because it's pass first. But when I got a guy, and we're talking about offensively, and we're talking about a lead guard, and I'm talking about getting my other guys involved, when I say my other guys involved, I don't think it really matters much on who I'm playing with, because Chris Paul has shown in the past how much better he can make guys who are less than without him. So with him being on the floor, if I have a guy like Chris Paul, who is a pass first guy, how much, and he can also score at an elite level, how much more effective will my unit offensively be as opposed to me having a guy like James Harden who can pass, but is looking at the rim more?
So would you rather have Chris Paul lead your offense over Steph?
I wouldn't take it that far.
See, and like, that's where you like. I get what you're saying, but at some point, like, I don't want to say the results have to justify.
I don't think that they're better players. I'm not gonna argue that part. No,
but I mean,
I
would argue if you'd rather have Chris Paul offensively, and Chris Paul obviously clears him on defense, why isn't he a better player?
Well, the reason why, one, if I look at Steph Curry in that system that he was in, and I think the ball moved a little bit more. Chris Paul being more of a ball dominant guy, but getting guys involved more, and getting the most out of guys from him specifically, as opposed to what the system is. That's why. So with saying that, I would say Chris Paul, depending on not just who he's running with, but the system that he's in, I think it favors more Steph Curry because of that system. Because the ball's moving. There's not one guy that's dominating the basketball.
John, what was your question? Like, what can you re-ask the question this started with?
What, means peak CP3 or peak Harden?
Yeah, but how did you frame it? What
he said?
Who would you rather lead your offense? Who would you rather lead your offense? Peak CP3 or peak Harden?
Okay, and by lead your offense, do you mean like be your offense's point guard or just be the head of the offense?
Can I ask another question? Who are your other four players?
Yeah, then I don't see how you can pick.
Who are your other four players? That matters a lot to me.
Yeah, that's what I alluded to earlier, because I think if you're leaning on Harden to be your number one scoring option, you'll have a better chance with Harden than CP3. But if you have another guy who's can take that responsibility as a number one, and you have a guy like CP3 setting him up, then that would make you lean towards CP3. And another thing, are we all like on the same page of which peak CP3 we're talking about? Like, because I've heard some people say Hornet CP3 is peak CP3. I'm more like Clipper
2014-ish
to 2016. I'm like 2013 to 2016.
The team that beat that Spurs team.
08, 09 CP3 was hell though.
Yeah,
that was when he had the extra
athleticism
like, and stuff.
When we say volume of production, what's the most efficient shot in basketball? And Lord help me if you say three. It's a free throw, right? And Harden, that elite free throw rate, it sustains through the playoffs. It's a little shocking to me though that there has been a little bit of a stagnation in his overall efficiency in the playoffs historically. Would you believe me if I told you that Chris Paul actually shoots better from 2 and from 3 than James Harden in the playoffs?
Yes,
because he does.
I mean, I would believe you because like I knew that before you said it. But like, yeah, Chris Paul's
it's shocking though, right? When you think about it, like,
well, the 3 not so much because James Harden shoots so many, but from 2, yeah, I can understand that being shocking. But this goes back to like James Harden. We're talking about peak James Harden here, so like 17. For me, it would be like 17 to 21. That would be like his peak. And like his game was so analytics based in terms of just his shot profile. It was threes, layups, free throws. Like he didn't have that intermediate game, and especially when defenses take other things away in the playoffs. Chris Paul always had that elbow jumper he could get to whenever he wanted, and it was a 50%.
Whenever he wanted.
And then he could snake off the pick and roll, and if you're in drop, he's just shooting 50%. Whereas James Harden, like, they still beat this Utah team with that janky defense, but even then, like, James Harden ended up just being funneled all the way into Rudy Gobert, and he's taking floaters, and like, there's an elbow jumper right there, and he's not taking it because some of it's analytics, some of it he just didn't want to at that point. And like, that's the drawback with like when you have this heavy analytics approach. It's like sometimes the mid-range shot is the best shot in that possession, and he just didn't take them. And it's like Chris Paul loved to take them. So the ceiling might be lower with someone who takes 12 mid-range shots a game, but the floor is definitely higher. And that's why you see like all the bad games James Harden has: 2 for 12 from 3, 0 for 11 from 3, 7 for 26 from the field. It's like he's more liable to have those games because everything he's taken is more difficult in terms of the shot selection. And then also he's like leading the league in isolations. So like the floor is lower, but the ceiling is higher with James Harden. And then it comes down to like, what are you betting on and what's more valuable, the higher ceiling or the lower floor? I don't know. That's why I think it's a close question. That's why I don't think it's definitively James Harden. I'm just taking James Harden because I think
you like James Harden.
Yeah.
I mean, the volume matters.
And not only that, Penn, them 3 years that James Harden had from 17 to 20, Mars will argue that those might be some of the best years in NBA history.
They are. He's not wrong.
I mean, I don't know. I don't even know how we can argue against that. I know people mad at him about the playoffs and stuff like.
But you know what's interesting?
For the most part, I still think he played well in the playoffs in those years. 17 but like everyone else was like,
he should at least be a two-time.
Anyway.
I mean, both of these players, they are considered like in the Charles Barkley conversation, the Karl Malone conversation of like they didn't have a ring, right? And it's kind of weird to me because it's almost like they're so different in that sense, right? James Harden is like he's less in the playoffs. Everything goes down, right? CP3 actually goes up in the playoffs. He's had some notoriously painful exits, injuries, etc. You know, ironically on the same team, these two. But CP3 has been a playoff riser, which is what I associate with all great players. So, you know, I mean, I'm still taking Harden, but yes, you're right. It's a little bit closer than initially, but I have to say, like, the advantage for me is going to go towards the player who puts more pressure on the defense, the player who's harder to scheme against, the player who's harder to stop, the player who's harder to, scheme against in terms of defenses. Like, I'm thinking about it from the perspective of a defensive coordinator. I just don't know how to stop James Harden. Like, I don't know how to stop him from getting 40. I'm not underrating CP3.
You hope he misses some threes, and you hope the rest don't call the obvious fouls.
Sure.
But, yeah. That's besides the point. Shout out to Scott Foster, man.
It's the player choice way. Yeah, them boys don't get it started. The player choice way. The player choice way. Come and switch lanes into the player choice way.